Morning, it's Wednesday, October 24th, Parshas Lech Lecha. I just want to continue what I asked yesterday, and morning, Liz. I switched because there's a man that's almost blind that sits over here. He needs that electric outlet to
Is he
illuminate.
coming today?
Yeah, he's coming.
What happened to his extender?
I don't know what happened to his extender. Anyway, we have very little time.
Yeah.
And I want to cover a few things.
Ari's not coming?
I don't know. Maybe he's late like you. By the way, I don't mean to...
We try. It's so difficult.
No, it's not. It really isn't.
This already mixed, Mendy?
Yeah, it's already mixed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it. Yesterday we asked the question, Elo told us Noach. I wanted to talk about Lech Lecha, which is this week's parsha, but I asked the question yesterday. It says, these are the offsprings of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. He was perfect. Tamim hoya b'derosov. He was perfect in his generation. Eselakimis halach Noach. With God, Noach went. He walked in the path of God. So you can talk a lifetime just on this pasuk. Rashi asks the kasha, world famous kasha. It says that he was perfect in his generations. So Rashi breaks it up and says there are. Tad, can you do me a favor? Sit on this side because I can't turn towards you. Thank you. It says he was perfect in his generation. So Rashi says, Yeshmir b'sain. Some of our sages say that is a tremendous praise, that he was perfect in his generation. I mean, his generation was a wicked generation, and if he was perfect in there, can you imagine how much better he would have been if he would have been in the generation of Abraham, where there were more righteous people, and how much more he could have perfected himself. So I have just a general question on this, like, if the Torah says he was perfect, perfect means perfect. So you can't do better than perfect. So that's one question. Okay. But then Rashi says that some use this as a negative thing, that he was perfect in his generation. But had he been in generation of Abraham, compared to Abraham, he would have been, what does Rashi use? The word? Lo hoyo nechshesh l'klum. He would have been nothing. Not that he would have been less. He would have been nothing. Like dirt. Right. Very difficult.
But it's comparing
it
to...
makes sense, I think.
It doesn't.
No?
It doesn't. Can you ever say a person walks into the shul who's not Shomer Shabbos, he eats pork, he's the worst, but we still wouldn't say he's nothing.
Well, that's true. Nothing is a horse.
He's nothing.
That's exactly the translation?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Lo hoya nechshev l'klum. He was nothing.
Okay. That is pretty close.
So I'm not going to talk about this.
But listen...
But let's make an appointment next year when it comes around to this parsha. we'll answer that because I have too much ground to cover.
Okay,
just
one thing I want to ask you for you to think about, maybe you can tell me later.
Yeah.
One of the things I read, the difference is God had to seek out Noah or Abraham.
Yeah, I mean, there are a million differences between Noah and Abraham. That's very true. Morning, Ari. Ari, I'm going to ask you just for today to sit on that side.
That's fine.
You can slide a chair between Benny and Liz. But the question that I asked yesterday was, it says, Eila told us Noach, these are the offsprings of Noach. Noach is Tzaddik, Noach was a righteous man, and so on and so forth. I forget who, somebody pointed out yesterday that it should have said right there, these are the offsprings of Noach. It should have listed the names of his children. It doesn't list the names of his children until the next verse. It should have said right away. So what does it mean? These are the offsprings of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. it doesn't really belong there. Okay, but I asked another question. Why does it repeat the name Noach? Ela told us Noach. These are the offspring of Noach. Noach is Tzaddik. So, because we're short of time and I wanted to actually get into Lech Lecha a little bit, I'll give you two quick answers on this. One is what I heard and one is my own. What attributes does the Torah give to Noach? He was Ish, a man, tzaddik, righteous, tomim, perfect, complete, b'derosov. So, Rav Gifter, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Tel Yeshiva, where I went to Yeshiva, said that he brought out something that it says, Ish tzaddik tomim. He was a man that was righteous and perfect, complete. So you can be a complete person. You can do everything, according to the book, exactly. Follow the Shulchan Aruch exactly. You can be a tzaddik. You can be observant in all the mitzvahs and everything. But you're nothing if you're not first what? Ish. First you have to be a mensch. You have to be a mensch. There is probably no English word for being a mensch. So that's why mensch is now an accepted English word in the Scrabble dictionary. Mm-hmm. Because it sort of denotes, like, really, if somebody is a mensch, he's everything. And that's very important, just to be a nice, decent person. There are nice, decent persons who unfortunately haven't yet perfected themselves in all the mitzvahs.
Mensch is a Yiddish word?
Mensch is a Yiddish word.
But ish,
Ish.
Ish.
Ish means you should be a man, you should be a mensch.
Okay.
There is no real English word for that. A gentleman, to be a gentleman. Maybe that's, maybe.
Ish, it refers to mensch.
Means a mensch, okay. Sometimes ish also means to denote the difference between man and woman. Ish, isha. Yeah, but in this particular case it means that he was a man that was righteous and complete, but he was a mensch. He was a man. Okay. That doesn't answer why it repeats the word Noach.
No.
So what I heard was, why does it repeat the word Noach? Is because, what does the word Noach mean? Morning, Elliot.
Calm, like menucha.
Menucha, calm. To be a calm, peaceful, not an angry person, not a person who operates out of temper. We all have tempers, and we all can lose it, But the bottom line is that when you're that type of a person, nothing good can happen. So the best thing to do is to be calm, and if you conduct yourself in a calm way, in a non-confrontational way, and in a pleasant way, then that's the main ingredient to being a mensch. Okay? I don't want to embarrass anybody in the room, but we have here our president, Elliot. There's a lot of things, what we all love about him, that he's a calm, he brings the shul to a point where it never gets, there are a lot of things that go on in the shul. There's a lot of strong currents. So, Elliot, we appreciate all that about
I'm writing
you.
his name in for President of the United States when I go to vote.
Yes.
I'm getting it right in for it.
Now, my answer is there was this big tzaddik. I like sitting here because I can actually see the clock. People who are watching this video probably don't recognize this background. They're used to seeing Phyllis Topel's name behind me.
You see that.
So
I didn't get it. So this tell Noach, the second Noach wants to say that he was a calm person.
he was a calm person, and that's why he was able to be a tzaddik and a perfect and complete and be with God, because he was menucha. He did everything. It was a very bad generation that he lived in, and he was able to be among them and not lose it. Sometimes somebody is so righteous, you see somebody who doesn't do exactly the way you do it, and you get all steamed up, We have, in this shul, somebody got all excited because somebody did Hagbah the wrong way. Picked up the Torah, like he went crazy, like that was, it's ridiculous, okay.
So what's the second one?
The answer that I'm going to give, and then I'm going to move on to something else, is that there was once this tzaddik, his name was Reb Zusha. There were two brothers, Reb Zusha and Reb Elimelech, and they were from Europe, and they were Hasidish, but they were really known for their goodness and being loved by everybody, and they were good to God and they were good to man. And and this is what he used to say. He used to say, when I die and I go up to heaven, I am not concerned that God is going to ask of me, how come you didn't rise to the level of Moshe Rabbeinu? How come you didn't become like Avraham Avinu? How come you were not like David HaMelech? He says, I'm not concerned. Morning, Shalom. I'm not concerned that they're going to ask me why I wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm concerned that they're going to ask me why I wasn't Reb Zusha. In other words, maybe you've heard this, why you weren't what you were supposed to be. You were put into this world to do a certain thing, to be a certain level, and why you did not reach your own potential, not somebody else's potential. So I say this is what the Torah is telling us. Elah told us Noach. You know what Noach was? You know what he became? Noach. He reached. He was what he was supposed to be. He was Noach. And therefore, because Noach was Noach, therefore he was Ish Tzaddik and Tom, and that's how he was able to become all those other wonderful things. Too many times, we want to be somebody else. Just be yourself, reach your own potential, whatever you can do, and you're fine.
Isn't there a couple of places in there, like also with like Abraham? I think also with Jacob, they named like his name.
Okay, so in general, there are a few times in the Torah. Liz is correct. There are a few times in the Torah where the person's name is mentioned twice in a row, and Rashi, as well as other comments on that. Whenever that's written in the Torah, it means God loved them. It's Loshen Chiba, Rashi says, and Vayomer Avram. We see that. Offhand, let's see where else it may say.
There's a couple of spots.
A couple of times
Right.
It says twice in a row, and that means that they were special to God. Of course, Avram.
Probably they've also,
Avram
like you
was
said,
special.
reached their potential of who they were supposed to be.
Exactly. There is a medrash that says that we have 24 books in our Bible. We have the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, we have the prophets, and we have the writings. So one of them is Job, Job. You familiar? You've heard that before? Now, what do we know about him? What's famous about him?
Yoav?
God tested him.
Eov.
Eov.
Same
He lost-
letters as Yoav, but it's turned around.
He lost
Eov.
all his children, something like
Eov suffered immensely all his life. There's an expression, if somebody suffers a lot in Yiddish, you say, Ich hab Eov tzoros. I have the tzoros of Eov. In other words, just like, it's an expression. If you got that, you're not a happy camper. So why was that whole book written? So the Medrash says, if that whole book of Eov was written only to teach us about the sins of the Dor HaMabel, I'm going to use that word a few times, so Dor HaMabel means the generations of the Mabel, then that would have been worth it, just to teach us the sins of the Dor HaMabel. Now, actually, in the book of Job, I don't believe it mentions the Dor HaMabel at all, but it alludes to it in very many ways. And the Medrash says, what's the lesson? What is it? What is it that caused the generation that Noach lived in to suffer such a great plague and basically have all of mankind destroyed except for how many people?
4, 5, 6. 1 second. It's
Pick a number.
3 children, 5,
Who?
8.
8 children.
3 children.
Now,
3.
there had to be only 8. Had there been 9, it wouldn't have been destroyed. Why? Because remember later on by Abraham, when God went to destroy the two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he bargained with God. If I'll find 50 people, will you destroy? No, and he bargained God down to 10. He says, if there's 10, will you destroy it? And God says, no, I won't destroy it. And that's it. Why didn't he bargain for 5? So from there we learn that if there were 9, God didn't let him bargain down more, because if there were 9, God would include himself as the 10th, and once there's a minion, he wouldn't destroy it. So therefore we know that in the Teva there were only Noah, his wife, and his 4 children and their wives, his 3 children and their wives. So that makes 8. Had there been a 9th, God would have been number 10, and there wouldn't have been. Anyway, what was their sin? So the Medrash says that the sin was. You ready for this? I'm going to try to be as delicate about this as possible. That they cohabitated with their wives strictly for pleasure, and not because of the mitzvah to procreate. Now, maybe it's not the best thing to do. Maybe when you're having, your private moments, you should be thinking about God and everything. But we're all human. And it sounds like such a horrible thing that because of that you destroyed the whole world. So actually, there's an allusion to this even before Noah. It says in last week's parsha there was a person by the name of Lemech. It says Lemech. The Torah says Vayikach Lemech shtei noshim. He had 2 wives, and Rashi says he had 1 wife for pleasure and 1 wife to have babies. So the Medrash says that this was the problem. So first of all, there's a general question we can ask. The Medrash says that because of that, the generation of Noah was destroyed, but that's not what the Torah says. The Torah gives you the reason why it was destroyed. It says, "V'tishoches ha'aretz," the earth had become corrupt before God. The earth had become filled with robbery, and people were wicked, and they were stealing and killing and raping and all that, and therefore it was destroyed. So this is in complete contradiction to what the Medrash says. I mean, how does the Medrash come and negate what the Torah says? The Torah gives you as a very specific reason why it was destroyed, but the Medrash maintains, no, it was destroyed because they when they had relations, they were doing it for pleasure and not because to fulfill God's commandment. So I once heard, now, I'm just going to ask one more quick question. It says that Noah was a man of God, he was perfect and everything, and then later on, what's the first thing Noah does when he leaves the Teva? Anybody remember? Anybody know?
Get drunk.
Very close, very good. The first thing he does, I want to read the pasuk because I haven't seen it in a while. Very good. He planted a vineyard. Very good. So the Medrash says over there, because he planted a vineyard, he became a mundane and a non-holy person. That's what the Medrash says. So he was perfect. He was with God. He was 1 year in the ark doing nothing but God's work, taking care of whoever was there, feeding the animals and praying and, no cable, no satellite, nothing, It's all he did. He didn't do anything wrong, and comes out, he's got to eat, he plants a vineyard, and because of that, boom, he fell from grace. So why is that? So in 60 seconds or less, I'll give you the answer, and then I guess we'll have to stretch this out another day. The answer is that in our lives, we can't separate this world, the mundane world, from the ruchnius and the gashmis. Everything we do in our lives has to be a mixture. Now, there's somebody who sits in shul all day and davens and learns and everything and doesn't go home and take care of his family and fill the needs of his family, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever. This is not a good person. And somebody who does only that kind of stuff is not good. So you can enjoy life, but you can't separate it from being a Jew and from mixing it with your obligation to follow the Torah. And this was wrong with the generation, that they separated. They had one wife that they would deliberately keep ugly. It says that they would sit in tattered clothes, and this wife was not for pleasure. This wife was just, they did it for God, for Shem Shemaim. They didn't want to have any pleasure when they had relations with this wife. They just wanted it because God says you got to have babies, so that's what the purpose of that woman was. And then they had one that they would dress up, and the Medrash says they would dress him up like a harlot, with fine clothes and perfume and everything, and this was strictly for pleasure. And that is the cause. So the Medrash is not negating what the Torah says. You know why they became thieves and robbers and rapists and everything? Because they went to the extremes. They had one for this and one for that, and they did not know how to combine the two. Whether it's you're eating, whether it's a physical play, whatever you're doing, you got to mix the two. And that's why the Medrash says when he went out, he was totally 100% spiritual in the Teva. But when he came out, he had to eat. But you know what he should have planted? String beans. He should have planted potatoes, because he's got to eat. What did he do?
Wine for pleasure.
He wanted the pleasure. He planted wine. And we know what happened. He got drunk, and that was the downfall. So that's how he fell from grace, that he was not able to incorporate the physical and the spiritual. Okay.
Very
Yeah, I don't know.